Welcome to Side Hustle Paradise. I'm your host, Marc, the podcasting coach, bringing you expert sessions from top side hustlers and business owners where we teach you how to boost your income and do the work that you love. And one of the fascinating side hustles is low content publishing over on the Kindle Direct Publishing platform. This is an opportunity for anyone to come out with their own book and actually come out with a whole bunch of different books. So we're going to be talking about this space and how you can use it to fuel your income in this session. We are joined by an expert who runs a six-figure passive income business built around an insanely profitable self-publishing empire. She teaches people how to create a passive income-driven business and lifestyle. So our expert who joins us is none other than Rachel Harrison-Sund. Rachel, welcome to the summit.
Thank you so much, Marc. Wow, that was a fantastic introduction there. Thank you.
Rachel, I'm so happy to have you on Side Hustle Paradise. And there's just so many different ways to make money with your writing. Low content publishing is one of those ways. I wonder if you give us a quick overview of what that looks like for people who may not be familiar with the concept.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I think most people's eyes kind of glaze over when they hear low content. They have no idea what that means. But I mean, it generally is just books that have little to no content and usually repetitive in nature. So I'm talking about things like daily planners, guest books, journals, activity books, coloring books, log books, that sort of a thing.
And these things are usually very easy to create. You just have one type of outline and you keep creating around similar themes and change some things up. I'm wondering, like, this seems like something you could very easily publish a whole bunch of books on. So how do you publish all these different books and then market them also?
Yeah, well, mainly what I do is I just use Amazon to do research. And my goal really is to find out what types of books people are actively searching for before I create them so that I know that there's already an existing market. So I conduct my research on Amazon. I just kind of see if I can follow the trends, see what people are already searching for. I do some keyword research. I have a couple of different tools that I use for that. And then when I'm pretty satisfied that there's enough people looking for that type of book, and I feel like I can stand a chance against the competition, then I just get to creating. So if it's a day planner, I will create my different, my unique interior for my day planner. And then I'll just start creating a few different covers, trying to target different audiences and basically just seeing like what the gaps in the market are and following those different leads. So I do that, like I said, everything from day planners, same thing with guest books, log books, activity books, that sort of a thing. So I'm really just focused on like what customers are actively searching for. And then I just go from there and try to fill up those gaps.
And is this sounds like a more broad approach? Like there are some people who they just focus on one niche. Is the low content publishing strategy a more broad play, or is that a little bit niche as well?
I think in the beginning, you're trying to experiment with different niches. I know I certainly did. I was taking a more broad approach, which I think is good until you can find something that you actually have success with. And then I think most people, including myself, once you experience success in one or two particular niches, you kind of want to double down where you're having the most success. So for me, that was with planners. So in the beginning, I was doing, notebooks, dot grid journals, planners, guest books. For me personally, I noticed that my planners really started to take off. So from there, I kind of stopped doing things like notebooks, dot grid journals, and then I really focused in on where I was having success. For me, that was planners. But the cool thing is that, talking to other people in this space as well, everyone seems to have, success in their own sort of niche. So, I've got a friend, she had a six-figure business just strictly based on notebooks. No, I never really had a lot of success with notebooks. For me, it was planners. For someone else, it might be guest books. So I think, in the beginning, you might take a broad approach just to kind of see where you gain some traction. And then from there, usually you just want to double down where you're having the success.
And I do like the idea of doubling down where you see the success because, if the results are looking good, then you just go more in and you get more results. So How do you figure out what niche works for you? Because sometimes you could just attribute more success to, oh, you just had a bigger campaign for this book. So what would you like, how do you determine that successful niche for you?
It's just all about sales. I mean, when you're talking about campaigns, I'm assuming you're talking about like ads, but I've never used ads or any other promotional strategies. I really focus on the keywords, the categories. That's where I focus most of my time. So I think most of my success is just doing that solid research up front, focusing on, creating a book that someone actually is already searching for instead of just a book that I think is a good idea. So that's really what I do. And then, how I determine my success is just, are they selling? I mean, if the sales are rolling in, that's the biggest indicator of success that you can have. So if I notice that I'm having a lot of sales, with my day planners that have, like a catchy quote on the front, well, then I'm going to start doing some more planners with quotes on the front. And, that's a good example right there. Most of my top selling planners are ones that have, like catchy phrases or snarky comments. I seem to really hit home with the millennial market. There's a lot of this, what I would call millennial speak, a lot of slang that, some of it's kind of over my head because I'm kind of at that age now where I've just hit 40. So suddenly I'm looking at the current language going like, what are these kids talking about? Where, that would have been me maybe just 10 years ago. So yeah, I think really paying attention to those trends in language and slang has been really useful for me. And yeah, that's where I've had most of my success, is just paying attention to those things. And those are things that you can pick up just by listening to people talk. It's not even necessarily about going out there and looking at other book covers and things like that. That's just, if I'm on a website or I'm watching TV or a YouTube video and just hearing the language that people are using, that's been really useful for me.
And it's interesting how this is all fueled by keywords and categories, because there are a lot of authors who they just focus on the promotional side, and keywords and categories they do a little bit, but it's not their main focus. I know Publisher Rocket is one of the tools that helps with keywords and categories. Is that what you use, or is there like a whole process for your approach?
So yeah, Publisher Rocket is the one that I'm currently using. I've used a bunch of them. When I first started, I was using KD Spy. That was when I started off back in 2014 when I was doing nonfiction and fiction. Then I was using Merchant Words, but I like Publisher Rocket because it's just got a few different features that the other ones that I just mentioned don't have. But I think, keyword research can be very confusing to authors. And it can also be very tedious and boring. So some people might try to skip that step, or they don't spend as much time on it as they could or should, enough time that, would actually help them to propel their books forward and get some more discoverability for their books without having to resort to ads. So I think ads can certainly be useful. You only have to look at some of the best sellers and take a guess at what their ad spend is and see how successful they are. But I haven't gone down that road yet with my low content. I think it's definitely something I'd like to experiment with, but I really, really do focus on the keyword research. It's not the most fun part of the process for me either, but I do generally enjoy research. So yeah, I just have really found that's helped me to get the most discoverability for my books for sure.
And again, keyword research, that is something so important that a lot of people overlook. I definitely do a lot more keyword research when it comes to YouTube video ideas, but with any book, or with the majority of books, the launch is where you get the most of your sales, and then there's a drop off in sales. And I'm wondering, when you see one of your books that was doing well has a drop off in sales, are you doing anything to prop up that book and get its sales again, or are you just waiting for the algorithm to kick in?
It's kind of a different experience with the low content. I know exactly what you're saying, because I used to, same thing, when I was doing the fiction and the nonfiction books, you'd get a huge kind of boost out the door with that launch. And then as the sales start to fall off and you kind of start getting lost in the algorithm, at that point, that is when I used to employ at the time Facebook ads. That's what I would use. But with the low content, I've found I haven't really had to play that game. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I just stepped away from the fiction and the nonfiction books and just started to focus solely on the low content, because there seemed to be something different at play there where I wasn't experiencing that same sort of initial boost and then drop off. With the low content books, I would just find that once I launched them and I wasn't doing anything to promote them, there was just such a demand around this type of book, which I think doesn't necessarily exist with the fiction and the nonfiction. With those, you really have to do something to kind of push yourself out there to begin with, because there's just so much competition. And it's not necessarily as broad as something like a day planner where, many, many people need a day planner. They're a little bit more generic, if you get what I mean. So you're not really trying to push hard toward a specific audience. You don't have to send out like an email broadcast or try and find those different promotional strategies. Now, having said that, low content books are getting more and more competitive. So that could change. It's a rapidly changing space. Self-publishing in general is a very rapidly changing space. So all those things could change. What I'm saying now might not be valid in 6 months' time, but I haven't had to actually, play that sort of a launch game. So normally, if a book's going to sell, it will do so within the first couple of weeks. And I find that the book sales will then just simply remain consistent. Now, whether that's only selling 1 or 2 copies a month, or whether it's selling dozens of copies a month, or even hundreds. The other thing here is you're publishing at more of a volume. So instead of just publishing one nonfiction or fiction book in, say, a year, you might be publishing 100 low content books in a year. Or, some people are publishing these by the thousands, and I don't recommend that because I think if you're publishing that many, then you're not really focusing too much on quality. But there definitely is some volume aspect to this game. So you might have, let's say, 100 books, and each one of those books is maybe only selling 1 or 2 copies a month, but it's all adding up. And those 1 or 2 copies a month sales is sort of remaining consistent over the course of several months. So it's definitely a different strategy and a different game in comparison to, like I said, the fiction or the nonfiction, where there's this kind of whole apparatus around the launch and then what to do when the sales drop off and how to revive that book. It's kind of a completely different landscape in that sense.
Now, there's definitely more I want to tackle on the low content publishing side. I do want to ask you though, you mentioned Facebook ads. I know you did this for fiction and nonfiction books, and you don't do it for your low content at the moment. Can you just run through like what you would do for a Facebook ad for those types of books to regain momentum?
Okay, so I'm going to have to dig into the memory banks, because this is going back almost 5 years now. So, Facebook's changing all the time, so I don't want to say anything that's kind of not current.
Right.
Yeah, and I certainly wasn't an expert in Facebook ads either. I would just basically put up the ad, and then I would just track it over the course of about a week. And, in terms of all the little teeny metrics that you have to keep an eye on, there's a ton of them, and those are always changing. But I would just basically put up an ad on one book, run it for a week, track it closely over the course of that week. And, it's tough with Facebook ads, because using Facebook ads on a book on Amazon, you can't really track which sales are coming from those ads. So that's kind of the biggest downside of using Facebook ads on a book. So that's the main reason why I don't really recommend it now. Now, I know a lot of authors do use them to much success. I think it's just a little bit more difficult than using the Amazon ads, because, like I said, you can't really track which sales are directly tied to that ad.
Yeah, that's just a big weakness of Facebook ads, just from like an Amazon standpoint. So that's not even a weakness on Facebook ads. That's just the way that part of business works. And that's why I wanted to explore. So it's good you're able to just share some insights on the Facebook ads. I know there's a lot of stuff that can go into a Facebook ad. So, we don't want to be sitting here talking about how to target and things like that, just because that's not the nature of this session. I know you mentioned you do 100 low content books each year. And with those numbers, 1 to 2 sales each month for some books, you get 1 to 200 book sales each month. And then you have some of the standout books, as Rachel was mentioning, when you find something that works, you just double down on it. Can you just walk through how you're able to produce that many books for the audience?
Sure. So, I've got a little bit of an advantage in that my background is as a designer and an art director. So it is important. You certainly don't have to be a professional designer to get into this space. Most of the people I know that are having success are not actually professional designers, but it is important that you have some sort of an eye for design, or that you partner up with someone who is a designer. So maybe you're just really good at the research, but you suck at design, but you know someone that's going to be good to take over that part of thing, that's fine. But if you're just, doing things solo, you've got to at least have an eye for design. So I've kind of got that on my side. So I've got experience with all the software, and I'm pretty quick with creating designs. Now, another thing to speed up the process is many of these types of books, you only need to create one interior file. So for example, for my 2020 daily planner, I've got a couple of different versions, but in general, I'm working on one template. So, and I've been using that same template since I started low content publishing in 2017. I've just been updating the dates. So that initial template, that might have taken me 10 hours to create. But once it's created, I'm now just going to create maybe 20 different covers and use it with that same template. Now, you obviously can't do this with every single type of book, and you have to keep it within reason. But it's the same as if you were to walk into a Staples, right? You might see a daily planner, and there might be 10 different versions of the cover just to appeal to different, sensibilities. So that really helps to speed up the process. Once I've got that initial template, whether it's my planner, or maybe it's my guest book, or some type of logbook, then I can just create, usually for me, between 10 to 20 different covers that are all unique covers. So those take a little bit of time to create as well, obviously. But it really does speed up the process. So it's not like, like a fiction, but like a novel that might take you a year to write, or 6 months to write if you're really ambitious. Or even a nonfiction book. Those things take a lot of time to create, because you're creating them from scratch, and they're very, very content heavy. The low content, you can create that one template and then just create multiple different covers for it. Now, obviously, you want each of those covers to look unique. You don't want them to be the same cover, just in 6 different versions of blue or something like that. And I've seen a lot of that going on right now. So, and I'm pretty outspoken about not doing that. I would consider that to be spamming. You want each of these covers to look really unique, and you want them to offer something unique to a multitude of different audiences. So that's basically how I'm able to create them at at such a rapid pace. I've toned things down a lot right now because I'm working on some other streams of income as well. This is just something that's kind of more or less running in the background these days. But when I was sort of at my peak publishing, going back to 2017 or 2018, I was probably creating between 60 and 80 of these books per month. Wow. So I was doing about 20 per week. So, I'd create my one interior for my planner, and then that week I might create 20 different covers. Like I said, as a design background, I can sit down and I can do that pretty quickly at this stage, just because I've got, 10 or 15 years experience of working in an agency environment where I had really tight deadlines and had to work very quickly. So I've got that on my side. Now, some people, it might take them much longer, and that's totally fine. I think it's not really about how much time it takes. For me, it's really about making sure that you're creating a quality product that a real person would actually want to buy. And I think that's something that some people in the space right now are forgetting. A lot of people are trying to just pump out excessive volume, and it's coming at the cost of quality. So, you know, while there is a volume aspect to this, I think the number one priority should always be in creating a high quality book that a real paying customer would find valuable.
And I definitely agree. Like, you want to focus on value. Like, low content publishing sounds like, you know, you could very easily just publish a whole bunch of books, but you do want to make sure you have a quality interior instead of something that feels rushed or something that doesn't provide that great experience. Now, with because I've only done this for one book right now, where, you know, you just write down the different things and stuff like that. I'm wondering, do you also do Kindle editions for your low content publishing books? And if so, would you say that is a good percentage of revenue, or do you just go the paperback route?
So all of mine are paperback. I think for the low content books that I do anyway, they don't lend themselves well to Kindle because they're books that are meant to be written in, right? So with a daily planner or a guest book, I mean, that's something that needs to be physically present. Now, I do know that, you know, some people, I've got a free Facebook group. I know a few people in my group do some versions of certain books for Kindle. I'm trying to think offhand if I can think of any decent examples. I can't think of any decent examples right now, but I know for me personally, none of my books would work in a Kindle format because they need to be, you know, they need to be written and they need to be physically present.
And what do you see as I know books are different and things like that, but do you have a typical price point that you go for your books, or is it variant?
It totally varies on a number of things. Usually what I'm doing is I suss out the market, and I usually go with what the market is, you know, whatever the market compares. So let's say it's daily planners, and most of them are priced at $7.99. If I truly think that I'm adding more value than my competitors, I won't hesitate to make mine $8.99 or even $9.99. So my books tend to be maybe $1 to $2 more expensive than sort of the average price in the market for that particular type of book. But that's because I feel confident in the quality of the book that I'm creating. So I think if you're creating a quality product, you can do that. People don't mind paying $1 extra for something that they think is a higher quality and something that they really want. There's a lot of people sort of undercutting one another right now, and it's not always the best way to go to try and be the cheapest. You know, you get what you pay for. And while, yeah, a lot of people are pinching pennies or trying to get the best deal, something like a day planner, I mean, people are buying that usually based on a cover that they really like. So if they really want a particular style of book, they're not going to worry about paying that extra dollar. Now, by the same token, you don't want to go ahead and price it so far out there that it's really going to put someone off. You know, people don't mind spending that extra $1 or $2, but they might not want to spend an extra $5 or $10. So, I mean, basically, I'm just taking an average of what the average price is for whatever that particular book is. And then usually I'm adding about $1, depending. So, you know, my books in general, I think I've got a few that are maybe like $5.99, and I think the most expensive one I have is $9.99. So it's not too out there. But again, it just depends on the type of book and what the average price of those book is across the niche in general.
And it's interesting how you have, I mean, $5.99 is a really low price point. There's not that much margin there, but for Rachel to have the success she's had, I mean, it's something where, you know, you don't get as much margin per sale, but you are getting a lot more sales, and that can help you bring even more awareness to some of your other books, and the Amazon algorithm kicks in. So it's interesting how you're looking at the market to see how to price your book. Sometimes you're pricing like at a very low price. Other times you're pricing slightly higher, but it just seems like the goal is to, correct me if I'm wrong in this, just get a ton of sales, even if you're not making too much money up like per book sale, just to get those sales and help you with the algorithm.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I forgot to mention actually when I'm pricing, what I try to do is I try to ensure that I'm getting a profit of at least $2. So, or a royalty rather. So, you know, when you're entering your price information, when you're publishing that book, Amazon will show you, okay, at the current price that you have it listed, this is going to be your royalty. So I try to make my royalty about $2 per book. Now, it's not always possible. There are certain books, especially when you start getting like longer and longer page length, your royalties can sort of diminish because the more pages you would have to price that book higher and higher to get that $2 royalty. So I think I do have a couple of books here and there that might be as low as maybe like 50 or 75 cents, but in general, I'm trying to keep it at $2. And yeah, I mean, like I said, because there's a bit of a volume aspect to this, if you've got a few hundred books that are each making $1 or $2 per sale, I mean, that all really does add up.
Adds up, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this is just really insightful to get an idea of the model and to get an idea whether you go low content or whether you just do fiction, nonfiction. It is good to have this type of mentality, and pricing, the way you price your books is just so important on Amazon. And if you guys do want to take your low content publishing to the next level, Rachel's definitely a great person to follow. Where do we go to continue following your work and journey?
Sure, yeah. So there's a few places. There's rachelharrisonsund.com, and I've got a YouTube channel. It's all Rachel Harrison Sund. So on YouTube, Instagram, my website, and I've also got a free guide if anyone wants to start publishing low content books. It's called 3 Steps to Publishing Your First Low Content Book in Less Than a Day. And I'll just leave a link for you. It's, I don't know if you're going to have links available or anything like that for people to click on, but if so, I'll leave that for you because it's a bit of a mouthful to just say the link out loud.
No worries, we'll throw it in.
Yeah, and I've got a free Facebook group too, and there's a few thousand people in that group, and some of them have been publishing for quite some time, so it's a great place to get some answers for all of your questions. And yeah, it's a really supportive group with lots of ambitious self-publishers, so come check it out.
We will have all those links down below in the video. Rachel, this was such a great session. Thank you so much for joining us on Side Hustle Paradise.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. So great.